So now we're going to do law of cosines, and it is a one-day lesson. It's again in Unit 10, and it is day 7. So remember, we're doing law of sines on one day, law of cosines on another day, and then the third day we're taking both of those and doing application problems. And then when we look at the scope of sequence, as all the others, it shows us how many days. It shows us the course of study objective. It gives us some teacher notes, some prerequisites, materials needed. Remember, you need a scientific or a graphing calculator. It gives you presentation strategies. It gives you technology tips. So now let's look at the lesson. All right, so we're given this triangle. And the first thing it asks us to do to triangle ABC is to draw an altitude from angle B to base point D. And remember, an altitude always forms a right angle with the base. Well, if this length is B from A to C, and we make from D to C x, that means from A to D is B minus x. So we want to use the Pythagorean theorem and the length relationship to set up an equation for each of these two triangles. Okay, so we have a leg, and a hypotenuse. So we're going to do c squared, that's the hypotenuse, equals b minus x squared plus h squared. That's this triangle. Now we're going to do this triangle, and we're going to say a squared equals x squared plus h squared. Now it says solve each equation for h squared. So on this one, that means moving this to the other side. So that gives us c squared minus b minus x squared equals h squared. And on this one, we're going to have to move the x squared over. So that gives me a squared minus x squared equals h squared. Now, using the transitive property, or just looking at here, we know this is equal to h squared. We know this is equal to h squared. So we can say this is equal to this. So we're going to say c squared minus b minus x squared equals a squared minus x squared. Okay, so then it says to expand this b minus x squared and simplify the equation. Okay, so we have c squared minus, and if we square this, that's going to be b squared minus 2bx plus x squared equals a squared minus x squared. Now let's distribute this minus sign. So that's going to be minus b squared plus 2bx minus x squared equals a squared minus x squared. So if we look at this, we have minus x squared on both sides. So if we add x squared to both sides, they're gone. Okay. So now we have this equals a squared. But it asks us to solve for c squared. So we have c squared equals a squared. We're going to move this over, so that's going to be plus b squared. And move this over, that's going to be minus 2bx. Okay. So now let's look at, it says using triangle BCD, write an equation for cosine of c and then solve for x. Okay, so let's go back up here. This is triangle BCD, okay, and it says write an equation for cosine of c, so we're going to do cosine c equals, and cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that's x over a. Okay? And then it says solve for x. So that means we need to multiply both sides by a. So that gives me a cosine c equals x. Well, and then it says substitute for the x in the final equation in D. So we're going to take this and substitute it right there. So that gives me c squared equals a squared plus b squared minus 2ab cosine c. And that's the law of cosines. Notice that the c squared on this side goes with angle C where it's cosine. This angle and this side always are the same letter, except changing case. So remember, when we have angle C, the side opposite angle C is side C. So we could write this as b squared equals a squared plus c squared minus 2ac cosine b. Or we could write it a squared equals b squared plus c squared minus 2bc cosine a. So notice this is side B, angle B, side A, angle A. That's law of cosines. Okay, let's look at applying that. And we just wrote the other two arrangements. So now let's apply that. So we have angle L and we have side L. That means we want L squared equals, and so this is side M, this is side N, so we're going to have M squared plus N squared minus 2mn cosine L. Okay, the letters don't really matter. You know, we were using A, B, and C when we wrote the law of cosines. So we don't know L squared. We know M squared is 15. We know N squared is 10. So this would be 15 times 10 cosine, and we know the angle is 38 degrees. Okay, so let's simplify this down a little bit. We know that we have L squared. 15 squared is 225 plus 10 squared, which is 100. And this would be 150 times 2, which is 300, cosine 38. Now you have to be real careful here. Kids wanted to subtract these two numbers. This is 300 times cosine 38, so you can't subtract them. But we can say L squared is equal to 325 minus 300 cosine 38. Now, we want L by itself, so we're going to take the square root there and the square root here. So this L equals, now this is a calculator problem, so you're going to do the square root, and you're going to do 325 minus 300 cosine 38, and you're going to get 9.4. So now we know this side, MN, which is what we were looking for, is 9.4. Okay, so you need to finish this lesson, and just like the last lesson, there's a total of 4 lessons we're working on this afternoon, and each of you will be assigned one problem from each of the lessons, and in this lesson, somebody will be assigned problem 2 and 3, and they will be posted on the Google Sheets.